I am Dr. Rife speaking to you, and I have been asked by a messenger from the supreme forces of infinitude to give a reinforcement of the harmonization in regards to the specifics of the body cell. I have agreed to once again enter this way of communication to reinforce the meanings of cell distribution, of how each one vibrates in its own frequency of life, and therefore reinforce the very idea of harmony and breath, and what are the interreactions of cellular design for the benefit of those that would like a clearer understanding of the cellular process of an earth body, and to again give you a parallel of information regarding the cell, for there shall be granted questions concerning this discourse in the regard to what I know to be true and to what they have said previous to my moment of entering the flesh form once again. It isn't any reason given for a rephrasing or restructuring of what has been already addressed by and through these teachers from on high. I do not profess to know what on high means, but I do know a request from such a force of great color of delight in the total purple of expression, of which encompasses all colors that vibrate as fire wheels within the physical form itself. The cell is a complex, sensitive expression of your original beginning of being, which cannot be counted by a certain amount of years, by time, nor by the calendar that is used in the world. A cell is a unit of spiraling force which emanates the special colors of red, orange, yellow, green, blue, violet, and purple. The first color of interest would be the red circle of vibrating magnetism to light waves and to specific frequencies of energy that touch the reactiveness of the energy in order to project the color needed. To understand its purpose and how each color represents a specific part of the whole of the physical form itself. To address these colors would be in my familiarity when I was on Earth to what is known in India and distant countries as the chakras, or the fire wheels of energy, and which are composed, as stated, in there are 7 vibrational frequencies to the purple of all creativity, which when expanded includes all the colors thus changing all things from the colors to the pure white or to the pure gold that represents the Trinity of that purple, white, and gold, you know as the daylight you see upon your earth. But to reinforce again the meaning of a cell, which pertains to the human body, and I have no doubt in the great scheme of things of the past, or what I say in my way is the whatever of all things, is the meaning and the code, I suppose we could say, the genetic code of a specific individual. One that not only inherits traits from the parents, but inherits as well the spiritual and soul genetics that compose the Trinity or purpose of this oneness that has been addressed to you prior to my time. To acquaint you with my work when I was in the physical form was the effort to find a way to break the deadlock of diseases inherent upon the human anatomy, as well as in respect to diseases of the plant and animal kingdom. And thus I turned to the microscope. And as I gazed at various cells within that scope, or microscope, I noticed the pulsation of life within the cell. I noticed the kernel of breath, the corona of the soul, and the expansion of that cell by my thought form, my feeling or attitude at any given moment. Thus, I was granted, though did not understand the implications of inner sight. In the moments and in the many hours I spent gazing into the microscope, I was seeing life through the clairvoyant light of my physical eye and discerning these pulsations I have addressed to you. And finally, I noticed that in this vibratory pulsation, that my thought force influenced that a spot of blood or specimen put into the magnifying aspect of the instrument spoken about. I therefore placed diseased droplets of human blood upon the slide and recognized and understood within myself that if I could change the pulsations of any specimen by thought force or feeling, then there was a vibration or a ripple disturbance of what seemed at first to be the tranquility of the plasma of the blood. And gradually, through experiments, I found that waves of specific sound or vibration could either increase the health tone of the cell, or any sound below the normal key of C in musical tones caused the great rapidity of that disease or that malignancy, of which did not seem to be a cure and a way to bring a more healthful picture to a diseased body. I noticed this vibratory effect, And what is sound, of which I will not trespass on at the present time, for more is forthcoming in that idea. But I did work entirely with the vibrational frequency of the cell, of which encompassed its various coronas of living force, and brought together a successful fulfillment to stopping any disease by this frequency of vibration, and by trial and error and constant experiments, we found a specific tone of energy for any given portion of disease on the physical form. Therefore, I cured terminal causes of cancer, of tumors and malignancies which could not be operated on by the normal means. And though I projected this to various colleagues, I was met with total indifference, threat to my license to practice medicine, and the word was out that Rife had lost intellectual balance and gone overboard into what they could not fathom nor dared to fathom. And so what I saw in the microscope with a clairvoyant eye, they could not see whatsoever. So I found the attitude affected the very looking to which they wanted to know and understand what I had found. And for my troubles, my instrument was destroyed. I was considered a mental retarded individual, and therefore spent time in jail for my concerns. It once again in your world begins to happen in the delightful process of what has been addressed to you by the supreme forces, and where the opportunity rises again, that man has the ability in his enlightenment to see he can be his own microscope, his own monitor of whatever vibrational force is needed to cure the disease, and therefore it proves beyond the doubts that anyone may have that your world and all worlds around you entered into a greater enlightenment where the word sharing becomes a must, and a caring for those that seek truth and yet, like my former colleagues, could not accept because of the fear of the occult or unknown in the exploratory fields of medicine as we address it at the present time. I regret that other colleagues of mine could not see what I saw, and I regret to say that some that admitted to it privately would deny it publicly, because if what I had discovered could revolutionize the field of medicine, then the doctors could only apply their trade by limited interest in what was called the medical approach. Now I find, and still have the opportunity, without rancor, hate, or resentment toward the individuals that persecuted me in the past, that if I had been listened to back in the years of this discovery, then we would have an easier pathway to bear in the pursuit of good health. But frankly, and without reservation or intimidation of the body I speak through, that if in the listening toward the full cure and not the relief of the diseased organ, then I would not enter at this time to say in the fullest of truth that because of the jealousies, because of the resentments, because of the greed and the closed position of medical authority, that spiritual gift has been denied its full expansion to the world of humanity. But I see a light at the end of this tunnel of understanding. And I see it's not coming through medicine or religion or the churches. It's coming through the subtle vein of truth, which addresses the issue of what is best for humanity. But to refer again to my purpose of the cell is to see where these masters that have addressed the issue of that harmonization have spoken that the cell of the body and all reference to plasma of the blood or to the ectoplasm that surrounds the creation of the cell itself, that the fullness of total expression toward the world being a microbe itself, and humanity as a collective group of one cell, look through the periscope of the light of their eye and see the totality in which they live and have their being and their breath. And within that clairvoyant viewing, they decry the fear of medicine and religion, and once again assume a role of remembrance toward their time as an amoeba, and which is not changed from the beginning of solid form, only in proportions of height and width, and greater improvements upon the various organs of the body, some of which have left only a fragment of their proof within the body, but still the process of this evolution to the gifted force that in his creation, man is the creator and is not subject to the whim of the chess player who moves his knights and pawns at will without the reflective qualities of what I addressed in viewing the life force in the microscope. To understand this cell is also to expand to the force of all cellular conditions. And I hope when I leave this body that you take a moment to touch a blade of grass and realize you've touched a living, breathing cell of the earth, and know that you've touched a finger in those of billions that is actually your own hand of God. May I express any answers to you, Mr. Joe?
Well, I thank you for that. You came in very unexpected. I had spoken to you once before and enjoyed everything that you said. You've been mentioned and referred to by many of the entities. Your cure has been referred to many times, and I've mentioned it also. What I would like to know is, you mentioned that we will be learning much more about tone and color coming in from the masters. What were you talking about, Dr. Rife?
Speaking more of what is the various energies surrounding what we term the cell. I do not profess to know beyond the body cell the various mechanics, you might say, of the soul or the spirit
in the body, isn't it?
or the breath.
The breath.
But I have implicit belief in the truth of it, for one condition cannot live or exist without the other. So I ask every individual that is listening to this talk to sit quietly in your most comfortable position and reflect on what has been told you. If you wish proof, then talk to the cells of your own body, not asking in a sniveling, cowardly way to be healed if you are worthy of it. You are meant to command the temple you live in, but with command of respect and dignity and love and tenderness, and not feel you must be ruthless in knowing you command the mechanics of your body.
Are you there?
Yes?
One more question. You mentioned vibratory cures for diseased bodies, and it was the actual use of sound through frequency vibration. Now, that is working with the colors because each color has its own vibrational sound. And you stated that each disease that you saw or diagnosed started changing with different frequencies, which means different color. So the sound and the color work together. So please explain.
Speaking of the word vibration, to clarify that word, as it's been stated before, you will find if you drop a heavy object, say a stone or pebble, within still water, the rippling effect will move outward from the center to the outer horizon of whatever encompasses that water in its circle of captivity. Each ripple is a vibration within itself, and each ripple is also below the one you see with the physical eye, for you'll find as the stone that disturbs the stillness of the water sinks into the bottom of the lake or still water captivity, that there registers also the various tonal sounds, which can be proven, I understand, by the weight of water that affects a submarine of the ocean. There are various neutral zones where a force of vibrating ricochet of sound, I can't say, there's a word.
Sonar?
Like sonar.
Reverberating comes back to you?
Yes, that cannot penetrate neutral zones or what they call heavy water. This you can speak about to someone more qualified than I am. But I only use that as a sample of what reinforces this vibratory rating of each cell in the body that we speak of in the present time. And you know, since I have entered spirit, I have been amazed and fascinated to realize that with the millions and billions of cells in the human body giving birth and leaving in death at every breath of the body, that every one of those cells has its own vibration. So that accounts for 1 billion cells operating in the graceful force of the temple called the body. And I'm sure if those interested would think about it, they would know a wonder the same as I.
And the amazing part about it is that they change as you grow more spiritual. The vibratory ratings change and the color changes.
And makes possible, I understand from the teachers here, that one can experience the levitation of the body by the self-realization of knowing these billions of cells weigh about the amount of a feather. And as you would think of a feather, you can become one and move in the various delights of which people are searching for at present on the earth. Now, I call that astounding, do you not?
Well, that's what we call thoughts, all right? But that's the thought of the mind, and the thought of the mind is capable of everything.
What else would you say in addressing this cell issue that you feel the people listening would like to know?
I've been with people who have seen auras. Now, I think just about everyone that I've ever met thinks that there's only one aura. And yet I understand there are 3 auras.
As I addressed the issue, there are 3 auras or halos around the cell, the soul, and its form.
Body, mind, and soul.
So, the same holds true with not only the cells, but also what is known and what does exist, a soul and a spirit. I would like to add that if one could not believe in spirit, then one might as well admit that he is not inhaling oxygen into his lungs for the purpose of replenishing the brain and cells the energy they need to fulfill their work. So, I have no doubt of whatsoever, for when I was in the body, physical form, I had remembrances of being a doctor in the far past, of also being greatly interested in some moment of Egypt where I was what your world calls a psychiatrist, dealing with mind problems that are not easily understood. And so we can say there is a reincarnation of the cell, as well as the reincarnation of the spirit and the soul. And I feel that proof sufficeth enough, unless, of course, you are hopelessly lost in the conditionings of birth and growth.
I'm not, but humanity is. Were the psychiatrists anything like we have today? The psychiatrist of, you mentioned the Egyptian period?
Well, I honor the psychiatrist, of which I would not have perhaps so much in my material body as Rife. However, I did meet Dr. Reich, Wilhelm Reich, here in spirit, and had many talks with him about what is the ability of specific
True psychiatry.
clairvoyant men or women to understand the changes that do not allow for a normal flow of the brain force or remembrance. However, I would be very selective in the psychiatrists that I would presume to know what they were doing. For I feel like a minister or a person of the cloth. They are not qualified to speak of the force of life unless they have a total clairvoyance to address the many issues that surround what they term the complexities of living itself.
Dr. Rife, you're bringing up something very interesting because from what I'm learning by speaking to the entities, it seems to me that we have a world of professionals who seem to really know nothing. And what we really need is a world of professionals who are clairvoyant. And then they'd be able to cure the ills of the people and the courts. And
I'd rather take it one step further, where everyone enjoyed a clairvoyance, but with a cautionary note, they used it for only the good of creation and not sink it in the mire of self-interest and self-centeredness on their own behalf.
meaning greed,
That is the danger.
of course. And that goes with everything. So now if we had the clairvoyance and honest people, which I think is what spirit or the masters are heading into and what we're looking for.
Well, these issues can be decided by your efforts and the efforts of those that surround you.
True.
But I know that from my view of the world, there is a grand awakening in the not too far distant future. So the proof will be in the pathways that open for you to show and mark your way to the fulfillment of this truth, love, and compassion. My very good thought to you and all.
Thank you, Dr. Rife.